Good morning. Welcome to North Shore Unitarian Church, where our mission is to empower people to live lives of greater depth, meaning, and purpose. My name is Emily Hartlief, and I have the honor of being your co-minister, along with Marcus Hartlief. And one thing that I love about this community is how you all just clustered into the new chairs. I didn't even have to ask. They must be comfy. Are they comfy? Yes, I'm so glad. We are in our summer season, and so there is no children's programming at this time, but we will start back on September 10th with an intergenerational service. All ages are welcome, and then children's programming will begin on September 17th. How many of you identify as either a morning person or more of a night or evening person? Okay, so I know that there's like this term of owl and lark. So larks are the morning people. So raise your hand if you're like, I'm a morning person, I'm up early. Kudos to you. The culture gives you a lot of extra credit, I think. And how many of you identify as owl people? You prefer the evening, the nighttime is really when you shine. Owl people, yep. Often not given the credit you're due for your hard labor at night. I say this because for a long time, I identified myself as a morning person, as a lark. I thought, I like to get up in the morning, I like to get going, that's when my energy is best. And this was kind of a central part of who I thought I was. And then I had a child. And my child, I think as many children are initially, is a lark. My child is up at 6 a.m., roaring to go. Turns out I'm not actually the lark that I thought I was. And in my wrestling with my identity around this, I realized that my peak times are actually between 10 a.m. and about 2:45 in the afternoon. So I'm really a midday person. And when I kind of came to this realization, my husband said, "Oh, you're a midday flamingo." So for those of you who are larks, for those of you who are owls, and for those of you who are midday flamingos, know that we are glad you made it here. Whether it was easy for you to get up this morning or hard for you to go to sleep last night, or you wish church started at 2:15, we're glad you're here.
Have you been resting enough? This is the time to rest. And this is our time to rest together, to have a moment of stillness and silence, of quiet among us. I invite us to begin coming into our bodies, taking a deep breath and letting it out with a sigh. And before you get into that deep stillness, I'd like you to go ahead and shake a hand out. Let anything that needs to be shaken out of that hand just come right out. And shake out another hand. To whatever degree you want, shake out a foot. And how about the other foot? Just shake out whatever you've been sitting on. Oh, good. Take another deep breath and let it out with a sigh. If there is heaviness in you, rest with your heaviness. If there is joy in you, rest with a smile on your lips. If there is love in you, rest in its warmth. If there is a need in you, rest with your need. in this time that is for meditation or prayer. May each of us rest knowing we are held by this larger whole. I have to say that from reports that I heard about summer services here, I was thinking maybe we'd just all be sitting in a circle down there, the 15 of us or so who would be here. I have something just very light and frivolous to share with you, and I'm glad so many of you are here for that. I hope that light and frivolous is what you need. The present. This is a reading from Phil Porter. It's hard to live in the present when it seems to be squashed flat into a little line between the past and the future. So here's the picture. The action movie hero is about to be thwarted by the doors that are sliding shut in front of him, and there isn't time for that other stunt where with a dive and a roll and he flies through at the last minute. Anyway, he could get through, but the girl or the kids or the rest of the party he is rescuing would be the wrong side of the door, and it usually is a he that is the hero, though there are a few more women finding themselves in this sort of tight spot. So anyway, he gets himself wedged in between the doors. And with superhuman effort, or the 3 cups of coffee and a little adrenaline, he manages to push them back open, and of course that causes a short circuit in the whole evil electrical system, and sparks fly everywhere. It sounds quite daunting to push back the closing doors of the past and future. But it is quite simple. Play. Messing around, creating, improvising, dreaming, engaging, giving and taking, these are all easy ways of expanding the present. It turns out that the present can be a great, huge field, not just the fence. Sometimes the present is a moment, it was here and now, and it is there, and we were just standing around. But in the bigger scheme, the present may be a whole week or month or even longer. At the cosmos's most cosmicness, Phil writes, I suppose it's always the big now. If you have a common cold, the present can seem interminable. If you're having fun, time flies. So ends the reading. 2 of my favorite ways to expand the present are to fly kites and skip rocks. There's a certain purposelessness to these activities that just delights some part of me that isn't nourished by most of my purpose-laden life. Kite flying can be a little tricky. You need just the right spot with good, consistent wind for the kind of kite flying I like to do. It's not just the single-string kites, the sport kites that you can move around. This isn't about kite flying. This is about skipping rocks, where all you need is water and rocks, and it turns out that there are plenty of those around here. Add a not quite 2-year-old cheerleader. Oh, and I've been skipping stones every chance I've gotten. But even skipping stones in the stunningly clear water of a bay on the Sunshine Coast, or across Alouette Lake nestled into the deep green forested hills, I couldn't entirely leave purpose behind. I just kept noticing all of the profound life lessons skimming along the water beside my stones. I was going to share a list of 10 of them, but luckily for you, Emily convinced me that it's just 5. So here they are, the 5 theological points of skipping rocks. 1, you don't find the perfect skipping stone by looking harder. Anyone who's ever skipped stones knows the kind of perfect stone that I'm talking about. There was one over there I saw earlier. They're flat, just perfectly flat and smooth and round. And while you might occasionally find the kind of magical spot on a creek that has somehow been hydrogeologically blessed to churn out these flat, smooth, round rocks, most of the time they're pretty rare. So one is tempted to find perfect skipping stones by furrowing the brow, narrowing the gaze, examining rocks one by one and analyzing them for their roundness and smoothness and flatness. And while I can't prove it with any kind of quantitative evidence, I'm convinced that what actually leads to more perfect stones in my hands is what the author of that reading calls easy focus. The soft, open gaze, taking in the bigger picture rather than analyzing for detail. So try this, if you will, for a second. Just furrow your brow and look very intently for a moment at something nearby. Analyze it, get that nice hard focus. I think you all know how to focus on things. And then let it all go for a moment. Open your brow, open your breath, and enjoy that more soft, easy focus. It feels better, right? Certainly there's times in life when a good, hard focus is incredibly helpful, even necessary. But our culture really does encourage us to practice that hard focus a little more than is good for us. Can you imagine places in your life where you're used to using hard focus, where you might enjoy yourself more and maybe even be more likely to find a few more perfect stones if you were to let your attention soften? Point number 2. You can't always predict which rocks will skip best. This second truth is really a corollary of the first. When I'm skipping rocks, I've usually collected several at a time. And looking down at my handful of rocks, I have an idea about how well each of them will skip. And I often find myself saving the one that I think will get the most hops for the last throw. And often, I'm wrong. There's a lot of research out there, actually, about how poor we humans are about making predictions. There was one key study, Philip Tetlock at the University of Pennsylvania. He showed that political experts, pundits and politicians and so on, that they struggled to perform better than dart-throwing chimps in forecasting geopolitical events. That's his language. But subsequent research shows that there are a few things that contribute to making accurate prediction, and one of them is that easy focus, taking in the broad spectrum of what's happening. 3, your best fling will probably happen when no one is watching. Oh, I count the circular ripples where the stone has grazed the top of the water, 9, 10, 11, 12. The most of the day, I jump up and I turn around with a grin across my face, eager to celebrate my accomplishment and receive the rightful accolades of a master stone skipper. And no one has seen my feat. The lesson I've learned is that this small bump in my road cannot stop the celebration that is due. I really don't think there's anything too small to celebrate, or that you can celebrate too often or too much. Celebrating, which feels good and is a completely renewable resource, opens the channels of gratitude and joy. And here's the thing, if I get to celebrate my 12 skipping stone hops, which is totally silly and really doesn't do anyone any kind of tangible good, what about the countless diapers and dishes and errands I do? I bet each and every one of you today has already done something worth celebrating. And I just want to take a moment now to offer you any permission you need to celebrate yourself for whatever you've already accomplished today. Getting here, the least among them. 3. So 3 was your best fling. Will probably happen when no one is watching. But 4 is that your best fling is not the one that gets the most hops. Because no matter how long a journey it takes, every stone ends up at the bottom of the water. There's a moment that comes for me most of the time when I'm skipping stones, when I no longer have to work at my easy focus, when the celebrating just feels as natural as breathing. That moment of expanded presence, that timeless moment, that's the best fling. My colleague and mentor, Reverend Doug Kraft, describes it like this. He says, "When I was a kid, I liked to skip stones on lakes. If I threw a flat stone at the correct angle and with enough speed and energy, it would kiss the surface and leap into the air again and again. If we have too much stuff in our lives, our attention skips from one object to another without really enjoying anything. If we have too many activities, our attention jumps from past to future without settling into the present. If we have too many opinions, we end up thinking about how things should be without fully seeing how things are. Happiness and ease, Doug says, flow from the bottom of the lake. They aren't found hopping over the surface of life. We have to slow down enough to settle into their depths. Joy and ease are simple and uncomplicated. Having lots of things to do, stuff to manage, places to go, and opinions to consult makes life complicated. So practices that cultivate simplicity, Doug encourages us, they do two things. First, they reduce the amount of stuff, activities, preferences, so we have a better chance of settling into the present. They get the outward to resonate a little better with the happiness, joy, and ease in our depths. And second, they help us become more aware of our relationship to stuff, experience, and thought. Skipping stones or flying kites, sitting in meditation or walking quietly in the woods. We must take time with practices that cultivate simplicity to get to the bottom of the lake. And finally, 5. Even with the most perfect skipping stone, the point is to let it go. I really do cherish those perfectly round, totally flat stones. The ones that feel so right in my hand with just the right weight. And sometimes I find one so perfect that I just can't throw it right away. I might set it somewhere or tuck it into my pocket, saving it for my last toss. The thought even crosses my mind to hold on to it, cling to this little piece of perfection. But of course, the perfect skipping stone is no longer any skipping stone at all if I trap it in my pocket or on my desk as a paperweight. Those magnificent qualities of that perfect stone only shine in those fleeting moments after I've released it. Let it go on a journey where I cannot follow. I was reminded one day, letting go after rock, of a poem by Mary Oliver. I'll close with. I often share a piece from it at memorial services. You may have heard it. And it's a good reminder that just as we can line our lives with celebration, little celebrations, Mourning is also a constant attendant. Small losses, a daily part of our humanity. In Blackwater Woods, she writes, "Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over blue shoulders of the ponds, and every pond, no matter what its name, is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go." I'm so glad to be here with you. Amen. Blessed be.